before we begin, we need to test the ESD equipment, such as the cable I'm using, and to test it with this device it should show a green light. I'm now going to be installing the hard drive. It's as simple as slotting the hard drive into the bay itself, as shown here, and this should clip into place. Then it's a case of taking the PATA cable, and this slots directly into the motherboard itself, as you can see. And then we should be able to get hold of one of the power cables. This one's a 4-pin, and that should just go directly into the hard drive itself, and this gives the hard drive power. Next we're going to be installing the motherboard, and with these systems they have an easy lock clip in place, which makes installing the motherboard fairly easy, and it should just slot in as shown, and that's the motherboard installed. Now I'm going to be installing the optical drive, and this is exactly the same as the hard drive, just goes into the allocated bay. This slots in with the easy clips, should clip into place, and then taking the PATA cable, this should go again directly into the motherboard as shown here. And then looking for one of the power cables, this goes into the optical drive itself, and this gives it power, and it should be fully operational. When installing the power supply, it should slot into its bay, obviously with the fan and the power output to the outside of the case, and then it's a case of clipping this into place as shown, and then getting a 24-pin connector that slots directly into its bay in the motherboard, as you can see here, and then taking a 4-pin connector, which should be there, and that slots into the motherboard itself in this position. When installing the processor into the motherboard, just be aware of there's a corner that's missing a couple of pins, and this needs to be lined up with the same formation on the holder. And then once this goes in, obviously in a realistic circumstance you'd apply thermal paste, lock it into place, and then we're now going to install the CPU fan, which obviously should have the fan facing outwards outside of the case, and then this should clip into place as shown. And then if you take the cable, and just underneath is a slot for the cable to go into, and once this is in, that's the CPU installed. Next up is the RAM. The thing to take note of with the RAM is there's a slight indentation in the underside of it, and it's a case of lining this up with the bracket inside of the housing there. And once this is lined up, it should only go in one way. It's a case of a firm push, and that locks the 2 pins into place on the outside. Now going to be installing an antivirus product, which should be the first thing you do after the installation. For the purposes of this, I'm going to be using Basic Protection, and after going through the license agreement, it's just a case of following the on-screen instructions to install the antivirus, setting the file path there, and then the antivirus should begin to install, and this should basically install complete, and you should be good to go to run tests with the antivirus product. I'm now going to be installing an OpenOffice package, which is obviously part and parcel of the installation. It gives you your basic software like your Word packages, your Excel, your PowerPoint, them kind of things. And it's just a case of I'm running this from an external drive which has already been pre-installed, and then it's following the instructions, setting up everything you need to set up based on what the user wants, and then the installation will run and hopefully will complete. Just a test, obviously, once this installation has been complete, we're going to test the shortcut for a start, and the actual package itself, so we should be able to open it and test the document. I'm now going to be configuring the system for the user needs. So to begin with, I'm just going to show you how to change the desktop background. To do this, it's a simple case of right clicking on the desktop, and you should be able to then go into properties. This should bring up your basic desktop appearance configuration panel, and here you can decide what you want to change it to. For the purposes of this, I'm going to change it to a pale grey background, and then hit OK, and that's the background sorted. And on top of this, I'm now going to show you how to install, to create a shortcut on your desktop. You need to go into programs from the start menu and find the program you want, right click on that program and create shortcut. And this will obviously make a shortcut in there, and it's a case of left click, hold the button down, drag it onto the desktop, and this should be your shortcut created. As the next step in configuration, we're going to be showing you how to incorporate toolbars into popular programs and software packages. So for the purposes of this, I'm going to be using OpenOffice, and when it's open, as you can see from the top, all these icons are represented in toolbars, so they come in small little packages, and obviously these can be manipulated in many ways. They can be at the top, they can be at the bottom, be moved round. You can have specific icons on there. This can all be manipulated. Moving them just requires you to left click and hold on the bottom right hand corner, and then you can drag these toolbars wherever you need them. This is obviously the panel for selecting which toolbars you want, and if we select a drawing toolbar as an example, there we go, it should appear at the bottom. And as you can see, obviously this can then be moved wherever you like, up the top, wherever you need it to go. I'm now going to be showing you how to set up sticky keys, which basically involves pressing the shift key 5 times, and this should then hopefully bring up the option here. And if you go into settings, you can then start to edit and alter what you need, what you want, in terms of sticky keys and all the different settings that are involved in it. And obviously this allows you to use the Control Alt and Shift key without actually having to hold them down. So for certain users, this can actually benefit how they use a computer, and just the configuration of making it easier for them to use. To edit power options as to how you want the computer to be controlled, it's just a case of going into the start menu and control panel, and there should be an option for power options, and here's where you can obviously edit everything you need to do. So in our case, we're going to go into this tab and select that option, and then from here we should be able to select laptop, and if we apply, it'll then give us the option to change the hibernate function, which obviously we selected before. And from here you can then select an hour, which is for the purposes of this video, and at this stage you hit apply, you hit OK, and your computer should hibernate after an hour of inactivity. I'm now going to show you how to edit the appearance of icons on the desktop. It's a case of going into Properties after right-clicking on the desktop and the Appearance tab, and this gives you your general sort of ability to change things within the desktop. So if you go into the Effects tab, and there should be a tick box here for Use Large Icons. So you hit OK on that one and apply, and this should then change all your icons to much larger, more visible icons to be able to use. I'm now going to be showing you general maintenance on your system. So for this we're going to run a backup, which involves just going into the Start menu, into Programs, then Accessories, System Tools, and there should be an option there for Backup. And this should bring up the wizard to be able to run through what you need to do. So for the purposes of this, it'll be files that we want to back up. So if we follow the on-screen instructions, we can then select all the options we need for when we want the backup, how we want the backup, and where we want the backup. So for this, I'm obviously just going to be running a test which would just be on the same hard drive, but in realistic circumstances you would back up to an external drive. So you selected your drive, and then you should then be able to run the backup. It's giving you all your options, what's happening, and then when you actually run the backup, this can take some time. It can take, depending on how much you want to back up and obviously the speed at which it does it, but obviously this window will run through everything you need to know until it's completed, and then it will have backed up everything you need to do. Another maintenance tool that Windows provides is Disk Cleanup. This is a really effective tool. So if you basically go into Programs, Accessories, and Tools, you can then select the Disk Cleanup option. Now what it does is it will first ask you for your drive that you wish to clean, and then it analyzes it before bringing up everything that you can remove, and how much space you're going to save by removing it. Obviously all these are a checkbox, so it's a case of picking the ones you want to remove or you feel you can remove, and these come in all different things, from emptying the recycling bin to cleaning out temporary files, and it does actually improve the performance of your system. So once you've selected what you need, you run it, and then it should clean it out. To use the disk defragmentation tool, we go into Programs and up to Accessories and Tools, and it's another one of the maintenance options provided by Windows. The disk defragmentation basically organizes all the data that was scattered on the hard drive, and this allows you to see that. So essentially what we want to do is select the drive you want and run Analyze. Now, because obviously this is a fresh installation, it's telling me that I don't need to actually defragment the drive, but if you've been running the system for quite a while, it's more than likely that you will have fragmented data on the drive. So for the purposes of this, we're just going to run the thing anyway, just to show you the process of it. So when you run it, it does its course. I mean, this can take hours depending on how fragmented your hard drive is, but essentially what it does is organizes everything, cleans it all out, and then once the process is complete, it will let you know, and that's your hard drive defragmented. To start the testing phase of the installation, obviously the system's been built, the software's been installed, and it's been configured, so now it's a case of testing everything is functioning correctly. So obviously my first test was to see if the system was creating any error messages, and obviously the fact that it's booted up, and I'm showing this to you now, obviously displays that there wasn't any. Now the second test was to see if a sound file would run and I could actually play it and hear it. And again, obviously me running the video means I can record and listen to sounds, so that proves that that test is functioning correctly. Now, for my third test, what I wanted to do was basically insert an external hard drive and be able to read the files and the computer to pick this up. So what I'm doing now is hopefully going to insert an external drive, which it's popped up here, and then I should be able to read the files off it, which it's accessing now. So if we just hang on a second, this should bring up the the wizard. So the wizard's obviously brought up, and if we go into the accessing of the folders, we can now see everything that's on there. Now, just as a final test, I'm just going to find a video file and check that the video function is working. This proves about DirectX, things are all installed correctly. So if we find a video, it's just one of my older videos, and we'll try and play this, and if I play this, the sound is actually functioning and the video is working as well, which concludes 3 of my tests and proves that the system is functioning correctly. Now I'm going to be running my final tests on the system itself, which if I go and open the OpenOffice package, this proves that the shortcuts are working, and then once inside, I'm just going to use my test log as a practice document, and I'm going to look at trying to save it onto the hard drive and be able to open that back up again. And obviously this is a good test to prove that the hard drive is saving things correctly. So if I go into the local drive, and I'm just going to save it straight onto there for the purposes of this. So if I save that, and that's absolutely fine, so we click through that. Now hopefully this is saved onto the drive, so it's a case of closing this down now and trying to relocate it. So if we open this up, wrong drive. So there's our file now, which is proving that it's actually saved onto the system. So if we open this up, it should, there we go, the test log is brought back up. This obviously proves that the saving function is functioning correctly. As a troubleshooting guide, I'm going to show you about missing or incorrect shortcuts on the desktop. So for this, we're going to use this Internet Explorer shortcut, which if we double click to check, there we go, it brings up Windows Movie Player, which is obviously not what we're after. So if we right click on the shortcut itself and go into properties, we should then, what we're looking for is the target. And as you can see, the target's obviously not set correctly, so we need to change this. So if we go into find target, we then want to be looking for the Internet Explorer. So if we go into our computer and our local drive and then program files, we should then be able to locate the Internet Explorer exe. So we'll copy the file path from the top bar and paste this in, and with a backslash we can then find the executable file, which is obviously, this is what runs the program itself, and this is where we want the shortcut to go. So if we check the shortcut now, there we go, brings up Internet Explorer, and this is all functional. So what seems to be the issue now?
Whenever I try and turn on the PC, it just comes up with a black screen and a problem with media on an error message.
Okay. Best thing to do is just see what it's saying first. We'll try and load the computer.
I'll delete the thing we got rid of the sound.
Remove disks or other media. So have you been using any other media recently or installing anything?
I used a floppy disk the other day.
Check. Yep. There's a floppy disk in there, so we'll see if what I'll do is Hopefully this will restart the computer. I'll just go check. I might have to restart this. Well, it's starting up, which has obviously got further. If I try, I'll just check why it's doing that. Because what it should be doing is you should be able to still boot the computer even though this is in. So I've got a feeling it's something to do with the boot order, so I'll just have a check for you. Try to turn this on again. Just go have a look now. So I'm now going into the system setup. It's just something to note for future if this happens again. You should just be able to go into the, yeah, if you can see here, the floppy disk drive is actually your main boot drive, which it shouldn't be. So you should be able to go in and change this. So if we go, there we go, and that should be changed now. So obviously your main hard drive should load even though that's still present in the thing. Just test for a second. Save it.
Can't wait to see it.
Should be able to exit.
Are we making a dubstep?